Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma 231 here, back in today to talk about Weekly Shonen Jump issue number 10 of 2025. And honestly, what a weird week of Shonen Jump we have this week, because of course, Undead Unluck ended last week, and this is like the first issue without Undead Unluck, like, honestly, ever, because I'm pretty sure Undead Unluck, like, took very minimal breaks throughout its entire run, maybe taking, like, what, 4 or 5 total, if even that amount. I mean, Undead Unluck was extremely consistent throughout its whole run, and now to notice, it's like, wow, Undead Unluck is over, and we're never getting another chapter of it again. Like, we can make it a special chapter at some point, but honestly, I don't think it's very needed, but we're not getting into our regular chapter in a Weekly Shonen Jump, which is just really, really weird to think about. But, of course, with the death of a series, a new series must begin in Weekly Shonen Jump, and, of course, Mission of Zakura Family ended in issue number 8, Undead Unluck ended in issue number 9, and this week we get a brand new series called Embers starting in the magazine, which is pretty cool. It's a soccer manga, or what the rest of the world calls football manga, which is a pretty cool thing to have. I decently enjoyed the first chapter, but we will be getting into my thoughts on that as we go through the entire video here. Really just a few notes before we get started. Many of you can probably tell that my list over here in which I read and then go through and talk about the series has ended up changing, because of course, for the longest time, I did a My Hero Academia, then Undead Unluck, I think Black Clover was in there for a while, and then it'd be like One Piece. And then we'd be going on to like some of the other like less popular but still very important series that I read each week. And now with all of these being ended, I don't particularly like to start with One Piece, because like One Piece isn't my favorite manga series out there. I mean, I think One Piece is very good, but like it's not what I want to start off my week with every week. And I know like a lot of people save it for last, but I've always loved saving Witch Watch for last is like it's either like a fun comedy chapter or it's something just different in general. So, with all of that being said, Kagurabachi is one of my favorite series running in Weekly Shonen Jump right now, so I'm like, alright, what if we move Kagurabachi to the front, do One Piece, and then we'll move Ichi the Witch, which is another established battle shonen, I'm going to say, even though this chapter marks, like, what, 20 chapters for it, I think? Let me just look real quick. Oh, it's third now. Yeah, we're 20 chapters in, but even still, Ichi the Witch is staying around for a while, and just sort of edited the lineup that we have here. Of course, next week, we are also starting a new series. I think it's like Star of Beethoven or something like that. I'm pretty sure that's what Viz is calling it for the Shonen Jump over here in the West. But pretty cool stuff there. But really, without any further ado, I'd say we're going to hop into talking about all of these chapters. And if you don't know what we do around here, I'm going to go through ramble about all 13 of these series that I read in Weekly Shonen Jump this week, and pretty much put them in an order off here to decide of what I thought was like the worst and best and all of those sort of in-between ranks of these series, and then we will actually rank them and get them in like this official order, like what's my favorite and what's my least favorite series this week. And we will also be picking a character of the week, or who I thought was the coolest character. So yeah, with all that out of the way, I just go and say let's get started with Kagurabachi. And honestly, what a fun and interesting chapter of Kagurabachi this was, because not only do we get a whole lot more into Iori's psyche and her fully understanding and remembering who Seiichi Samura is to her as her father, but we also got this really cool lore dump on like, oh, hey guys, here's how to say here's how to say Te word, or however the hell you say that. I need like pronunciation classes for Japanese sometimes. And yes, I did take 3 semesters of it in high school, so like I'm sort of a little bit bad at this, right? But with all of that, we get a little bit of a lore drop on like this island of Shokoku, and eventually we learned like, okay, this Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel where everybody's at does not allow sorcery. And then we see that Todo downstairs summons Hirohiko using sorcery into the hotel, and then Hirohiko has a generationally massive haircut that makes me go like, oh man, Hirohiko, you look pretty cool. And really, that's all I'm going to say about Kagurabachi here. Of course, I do longer, like 30-minute long videos on Kagurabachi on the channel, so at this point, I actually recorded the Kagurabachi, what is this, chapter 66 review? Yeah, it's Kagurabachi 66. I recorded that video last night, so it should be up on the channel before this video, but if it isn't, be looking for it here soon. But overall, I thought Kagurabachi was a pretty good chapter. I don't think it was the best out there, so we're going to put it right here as like, it was good, but I don't think it was like anything generationally good. Next up is One Piece, and this was another really fun one, because like this is the generational lore dump that we sometimes get in One Piece. And I'll be frank when I say this, I think the internet had a lot more fun with this chapter than I personally did, but just opening it up and sort of going through here, we have all this thing to where we're like, okay, of course, as we learned last time, St. Figurlin Garling, if I'm not mistaken, or not, it's not St. Figurlin Garling, it's Shamrock, that's what this guy's, I don't know why I was mixing up names there. We see that Shamrock, who is Shank's brother, and Gunko are pretty much talking with Loki. They go attack some Loki a little bit. I really love whenever we see that Shamrock's blade is actually a Cerberus, ate a Cerberus devil fruit, and like it turns into a Cerberus that goes and literally attacks Loki. But honestly, I really loved also seeing Grunko's arrow fruit being able to make a paper bird, which sort of like, or an arrow bird, which like makes them fly up into the sky. It's honestly a really striking visual that I really do enjoy. And honestly, I just really love all of Grunko's power set so far. It just seems so weird and just like wacky and interesting. I just absolutely love it, right? But going through all of this, we eventually see, like, inside the castle where Luffy, Nami, Zoro, and Road are all sort of interacting with the two giants who got beat up by, as we now know, Shamrock, but they think it's Shanks, and Luffy has this whole thing of, like, oh, hey, I've never heard Shanks talk about his family, and I really love the little note that we get in this chapter of, like, hey, I thought his family was the Roger Pirates, except for Buggy. Like, oh, man, Buggy just gets beat on so much, right? And then we see that, oh, I forget what her name is right this second. It's going to come to me, like, as soon as I finish recording this, or as soon as I finish talking about One Piece. I was just sitting here thinking about it for a second, and I came to it like, yeah, it's Ripley. I don't know why I forgot that, but we see that Ripley's talking with Frankie and shows off this child's drawing mural, and then we then see that Saul is showing Robin the Book of the Herald, which is this giant Bible, pretty much. And we get introduced to the first world, the second world, and the third world, and this mural that wraps it all together that Frankie is looking on in this moment. And, like, you can tell the gravitas that this thing holds. And I honestly haven't watched any breakdown videos of this yet because, like, I know that some people out there have definitely taken a look at this mural and, like, almost come to everything with it. Like, we see what seems to be fish people there. We seem to see what be, like, little animal people. We see, of course, Nika, the sun god, with, like, the sword and the wavy arm shield. We see, like, a big robot who I sort of presume to be the Iron Giant from Vegapunk, Egghead, and all of that sort of stuff, right? And then the whole thing of, like, the sun and a half moon god and, like, this devilish looking creature holding the sun in its hands, and, like, the big creature with, like, the X's on its head, like, the big whale looking. It's just, like, so interesting. And it's like, okay, it seems like we also have all of the ancient weapons represented here. It's this, like, massive ship, of course. What is it called? Pluton or whatever. Like, just is such an interesting One Piece lore drop time. It's just, like I said, this didn't hit for me the same way it probably hit for a lot of people, because, like, hey, I'm not the biggest One Piece guy out there, but still, I could tell this chapter meant a whole lot. And because it's a whole fact, like, it didn't resonate me with 110%, we're going to put One Piece solidly in the middle. It's probably going to end up going up a bit higher, but I definitely did enjoy that chapter. Ichi to which was also really fun, because, of course, last chapter, we got this whole idea where Oro says to Ichi, like, hey, boy, you are going to end up becoming a sacrifice. And none of us know what that means, and he ends up calling out this witch, like, hey, you need to go talk with that, like, unforgivable witch, or he doesn't use the word unforgivable, but, like, that unsavory witch, maybe. And, of course, I thought it was, like, Descaros, but no, we actually learn here that it is this witch named Jiki Shiron, or something like that. Yeah, Jiki Shiron, who was this witch who pretty much went brain dead, and then the oracle magic came and possessed her, pretty much turning her into, like, a ghostly version of herself, which is, like, not only a really cool thing, but also Jiki Shiron has this really fun, like, clown design, which, like, I only think that the artist of this series, who is Shiro Usaki, could draw, like, because it looks absolutely beautiful, but also, like, all the, like, high fantasy elements we see in this chapter, not only from, like, Ichi's outfit he's wearing here, which is, like, this buttoned up shirt, but he's got, like, the suspenders on around it too, and, like, this choker on his neck. And then they just sort of walk through a mirror, and Jiki Shiron is just there in this circus tent almost, right? And it's just really cool, because we also learn what, like, Jiki Shiron's whole deal is like, hey, witches, I am just simply going to be coming here and, or I'm sorry, it's a prophecy magic is what Jiki Shiron is. And she says, like, hey, you guys should be lucky for me sharing all of my visions with you guys, right? And just going through it, she explains her vision of the world hater magic of like, hey, by warping, all living things will be warped and twisted into an unliving abomination, and when none remain, the world will reach its end. It's like, oh my gosh, that's fucking hard as shit, right? And then going through it, like, the one savior of the world is Ichi the Witch, and like, you're the one light that humanity's been waiting for, but you will save the world with your death. As we get like more of the prophecy just saying like, hey, upon acquiring the world hater magic, the light will bring peace to the world, to be all but gone at that moment pretty much. That light will glitter out and die. As you get to the idea of like, okay, Ichi is going to acquire the world hater magic, however that may be, and then he's going to bite the bullet, but like Ichi has this whole thing of like, hey, if I'm going to die one way, I'm going to go down taking out some of my prey. Like, Ichi just looks really, really cool here. And the end of the chapter of Descaros just like standing up and watching it, Ichi and Jikishi Rones were doing here, and she clenches her fist. It's really interesting for what she's feeling in this moment. And like, I have nothing else to say, but great chapter of Ichi the Witch. Like, absolutely amazing. Kill Blue is a chapter that I have some definitely mixed feelings on for sure. On one hand, okay, we see Ogami's in his sort of adult body, and he's going through, and he's wrecking Principal Oka's shit in this moment, which is, like, really awesome to see him, like, go back and forth. It's like, pow, 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 pow. It really does look very cool, and really my one problem with this whole chapter is whenever it's revealed that Oka's like, oh, man, look at this, like, he unbuttons his shirt, he pulls up his sleeves, and he's gotten this same surgery, or as he calls them, upgrades, that some of his other members have gone through, where he's got, like, these superhuman abilities like tacked to him, and we see like his body's a different color than like his head and his actual arms. And man, I don't like this as like the crux. Like, only way you can be this powerful is like by augmenting your body in some way. Like, I really feel like it'd be a cool thing if Oka was just a strong badass guy like Ogami is, and that way him and Ogami could have more of this fair fight. I don't know, I'm not the biggest enjoyer of this design decision, but I'm also not going to sit here and say that I could have written it better either, because I know I definitely couldn't have. And then Ogami being like, hey, I'm still part of the Home X Club. Like, yes, he's still showing his roots while he's trying to take out Oka. Kakeru is dealing with Principal Oka's, like, other bodyguard, like, vice principal person. And we don't really see much of that, but we really just see, like, in the end, Ogami and Oka just get into a fist fight, and Ogami punches the ever-loving crap out of Oka, talking like that, hey, like, I don't know about your talent or upgrades, but when I was this age, I was up to a whole hell of a lot worse. Which, like, hey, Ogami, I do like that line, and I am decently enjoying this so far, but like I said, the whole thing of, like, the augmented body is just not my thing at the very end of the day, but hey, still pretty cool for it, so I'm probably going to be putting Kill Blue towards the lower edge of all of this, right? Now, Sid Craft Love is a Mystery was honestly one of my more favorite chapters this week, which is a little bit of weird to say, but like, man, I actually really enjoyed this chapter, and I found it actually very funny. We also do get a very nice, like, color page at the beginning of this chapter, which is just, like, really nice, as we just see all the outfits that Lulu, Sofue, and Alio are all in. And honestly, I really like the art style on this color page. I don't know why, it just sort of, like, rings out to me, and it really just does look like Paishi Tsu's art style, which of course it is, but like, I don't know. It looks really refined, and it does look really, really nice. The whole crux of this chapter is that Sid, Elio, Sofue, and Lulu are all trapped on an island. They're both pretty much got shipwrecked after the whole thing on the Elfie went down. And on this island, everybody's like, oh no, what's going on here, right? As we see that, like, all of the other boats sort of were moving away, and that they're sort of just, like, drifted back in the storm. They all ended up on this desert island, and Sid's like, all of the girls are, like, sort of shivering to themselves, like, oh no, what are we ever gonna do? And Sid is like, okay, hey, here's the thing, I need to go up and sort of find, like, some shelter or something for us. So he's like, hey, I need to find and do something fast. As he goes up and, like, smells some things and checks out the distinct terrain around this area, and realizes, oh, everybody, hey, it's a hot spring, of course. Oh man, you know what this means. As pretty much all of the girls end up going to, like, a different corner of the hot spring to sort of do their thing along with Sid. And we also just see them all bundled up, just sort of sitting there and all talking with each other, like, oh man, I feel myself coming back to life, and like, I've never been in a natural hot spring before, and like, Lulu's like, hey, I totally agree. As we just see they're all sort of having a good time here, as Sid sort of makes the proclamation of like, hey guys, don't come over here, and everybody's like, huh, oh, I sort of want to go over there now. And mainly this is just Lulu and Sofue, because Sofue is like, oh no, maybe he got hurt on the Elfie, and he doesn't want to show any of us, sort of make us not worry, pretty much. And Lulu has the idea of, oh, maybe he's hiding a weak spot on his body, and I can use that to exploit him in the future, which is a little bit of a fun thing. As we see that Sid notices them and starts to run around completely, going to where Elio is, thinking like, oh man, there's another guy over here who can help me. We all know that's not the deal with Elio. And they all sort of get running around in a chase around each other, with Sid chasing Elio, Sofue chasing Sid, and Lulu chasing Sofue. A little bit of a funny thing is they're all sort of running around, and as this happens, we see that everybody is tiring out a whole lot. Like, oh man, is this hot spring like getting even hotter by the moment? And eventually Sid puts it all together like, oh man, get away right now. It is a giant geysers. Like, the geyser reaches up to the sky, wetting everything. And as this happens, Sid's able to get everybody away, but oh no, it looks like he's seen Elio's secret. Oh no, he just passed out with his eyes open. And the whole thing is like, both him and Sofue are completely conked out, being the two that don't know Elio's true identity, don't know anything that's going on here. This all gets resolved, and everybody else is sort of like sitting on the brink of the island, like, oh man, how are we going to get off of here? And we see that Mr. Loose appears, who's of course Sid's buddy who loves reading romance novels, who we met a good little while ago. I think it's like chapter 2 or something. It actually says chapter 2 right here in the chapter. And he's like, oh, hey, you guys want to go fishing? And then they're all like, oh, why are you here? And Luce pretty much explains this is his family's private island, and he comes fishing here every few days. So a little bit of a fun resolution that I honestly did really find funny. It's like, comes out of nowhere, but it does make sense for this time and for this type of time period story. I definitely did enjoy it. And we didn't have this whole thing where Lulu's like, oh man, if I don't see more of Sid Craft's troubles soon, I'm not going to be able to best him. Doop, boom. I really like this chapter of Sid Craft. I thought it was just really fun. And honestly, I don't think it's going to be like my best chapter of the week, but I definitely did enjoy it through and through. Going on to the new series this week, it is none other than, like I said, a soccer manga called Embers. And honestly, not to go through this entire chapter, even though that's what I'm about to pretty much do, we see there's this new teacher who comes to this school and ends up forming a relationship with this student named Hatani. Hatani is like this strongest guy persona in his school. Like, he's able to best everybody, like get everybody, show him what he's made of, right? And all of the teachers don't really like him too much. But this one teacher, I'm actually going to look for his name real quick because it is pretty important to the overall story here. Oshimi Sensei is his name, right? And pretty much as the chapter just goes through, we see that Oshimi Sensei and Hatani get into this little bit of a relationship where Oshimi pretty much teaches Hatani, I'm sorry, I'm not used to these names yet, teaches Hatani how to play soccer and pretty much how to do a bunch of these various skills, and just saying like, hey, you want to beat me someday? And what I failed to mention earlier was that Oshimi pretty much said like, hey, I want to keep reprimanding you over and over, but you really like that fight. Well, how about this? I will show you how to do something better. Come and you can fight me one-on-one pretty much, right? And oh no, this isn't a soccer match. So Hatani learns how to play soccer, learns how to do all of these various skills, and a lot of his friends are very open to it, and like, man, Hatani's acting really weird lately, but hey, we want to help him out. And there's eventually this scene in the classroom where everybody's sort of like telling about Hatani, like all the teachers like, man, he's a good for nothing, like nothing at all. And Oshimi Sensei has this really nice sort of message where like, hey, children his age are ripening fruit. Whether they turn out rotten or not depends on how we choose to teach them. And eventually he comes out to Hatani and he pretty much just says like, hey, do you want to be in a soccer match? And he's like, yeah, I do. So we see that Hatani and some of his friends face off against one of the best soccer players here in the current, or in the sort of age bracket. And his name is Yuga Takami, right? So we have Hatani and Takami. These two are probably going to be on the same team, as we will be getting to by the end of the chapter. But there's this really cool thing where like one of his like brawler friends beating a baseball bat to the fight. And I honestly think it's a really funny visual and panel. But we see that, what is his name? Takami? Yeah, Takami is pretty much playing this game against Hatani. And the two of them are sort of just going back and forth. And eventually, Takami cannot score a single goal because Hatani is on the back of him the entire time. Those names are very tongue twisterish, and the whole thing is like, oh man, Hatani is like this massive wall at the end of the day. And eventually the whole end of the chapter is Hatani ends up losing, and Yuga pretty much just says like, hey, my name is Yuga Takami, that's my name, don't forget it. And Hatani just says like, hey, I should be the one who's telling you to not forget my name. Like, I will be coming back to get you one day, right? And we see that Oshimi-sensei is watching all of this, and Hayatani's really upset. Like, he's crying into palm of his hand, like he's not very happy about all of this. And Oshimi just says, like, hey, if you've got it in you to cry tears of frustration, then you have it in you to grow. Which is like, man, I feel like my heartstrings are just being, like, tugged by this guy, right? As we then cut into the future of some low point where we see that Hayatani is going into high school, and he's decided to go to this specific high school, which is Kosei University, which has a very good soccer team, and it's also, Otami, no, it's not Otami, Oshimi's, it's Oshimi's home of honor, so of course Hayatani wanted to end up going there, and we see that he comes up and joins the soccer club with the school. I also failed to mention that there were 2 female characters who we saw in this series, who were sort of like these soccer experts, who seem like they're probably going to be like the managers of the team, and they're like, oh man, what is it this guy doing here? As we get like the narration to end off this first chapter. Never lost a brawl, never won a soccer match yet, but as of today, this exact second, I'm taking my first step towards being the greatest. And that is where we end off Embers at chapter number 1. And man, I really did enjoy this first chapter. Honestly, I don't really have a whole lot more to say about it, and like, it was a nice, like, heartwarming thing. I've never really read like a full-on sports manga that's like gone on for a decent amount of time, like over 50 chapters, so hopefully this one will get there. And I definitely do like Hayatani's character so far, and Oshimi's character, and also just knowing that this guy, Yuka, was the name Takami or whatever, he's going to be very relevant later on, so honestly, really a lot of cool stuff to see, so I definitely did enjoy Embers' first chapter. Alright, and we are back now. I had to take a little bit of a break and get all my laundry out of the dryers, being that I am, of course, in a college dorm right now, so I don't want to have all of that sitting there while I talk about the rest of Shonen Jump, but I went ahead, got everything folded, got everything taken care of, and now we're back to talk about Astro Royale, and this is another chapter I'm very conflicted on for a few reasons, because at the end of the day, I like what this chapter was going for. Of course, we have Tarasu facing off against his enemy in the first part of this, whatever this thing's called, the Daybreak or Battle Royale, I think is what it actually is. And going through here, we see that Tarasu's enemy is this guy named Naito Satome, who is like this very big popular dude, like, and his Astro pretty much gets him power to more that ladies cheer for him, right? It pretty much makes him invincible, which is a very obvious thing there, right? And we see that every time that Satome goes and does anything, he always holds the top of his head to make sure something like his wig doesn't fall off, which is what we learn is the main crux of this chapter. And eventually Tarasu realizes this, gets his wig to fall off, and all the ladies sort of run away from him. But we learn that there's one girl that's always sort of been there for Satome and been trying to reach through him for this entire time, and that she still cares for him and likes him even whenever Satome doesn't look his best in this moment, right? And that is a very nice message at the end of the day. But the thing that really sort of peeved me off is that Tarasu now just has a sword ability. I thought he was supposed to be like just a shield. No, Tarasu now has a sword, which is like, okay, it is whatever. It makes sense that like his power up will be able to form like whatever weapon that he deems necessary with that. But like, hey, this is a battle shonen, so why not have Tarasu unlock this power while battling against Satome and realizing that his shield isn't going to do anything? So maybe it is a sword that he needs and having it like come about in the moment. I mean, that's like what shonen is all about, is like these last minute thought of power-ups, which, hey, like I said, this chapter is fine at the end of the day, and the whole crux at the end of the chapter is, oh, look at that, Hibaro is taking a piss, and Shikaba walks up beside him and says, like, oh man, you're the complete opposite of me, and he's like, oh my gosh, Shikaba, you're pissing also pretty much, right? And Shikaba's like, hey, maybe I'll come totally clean to you too, I'm the one who killed Dad, and Hibaro's like, oh my gosh, what in the world? And that's where we end off this chapter of Astro Royale. Hey, it was fine, but just like, just the whole thing about Tarasu now having access to a sword is sort of what peeved me off a little bit. So we're going to be putting Astro Royale down here in this bottom bracket. Next up is going to be Hematin, which I also thought was a very fun chapter because, of course, it plays off the last chapter where, hey, Kana is at the amusement park with Iomori and Iomori's 2 siblings, and pretty much the 2 siblings immediately realize, like, oh man, there may be some connection between Kana and Iomori here, and they sort of push for it a little bit, but, like, not too hard. But the whole chapter is really just Iomori and Kana just doing a lot of cute things together, having fun, as we pretty much see, like, they go on, like, a roller coaster, and Iomori is, like, scared the shit out of them, and I really like the moment where Kana goes like, okay, now for next ride something more your level, like how about the merry-go-round or something? And Imori's like, oh really, are you already using this against me? And also Kana's whole phrase of like, oh man, now I know you have a weakness. It's just really, really cute seeing the two of them together. And eventually they get on the Ferris wheel, and we see that the brother and sister don't want to hop on it with them. And we just see like, hey, Iomori and Kana have this time on the roller coaster, and she's like, hey, it's really made my day getting around to go around here with you, getting to know Shuji and Mikoto as well. Like, it's just been really, really fun, right? She's like, hey, I've been missing my family lately, and hey, I learned a lot about you too, right? And Iomori's like, oh yeah, I mean, I was wondering why you wanted to come here with us today, but like, hey, I didn't realize you were so homesick, right? And she's like, hey, it was all misunderstanding, and Iomori's like, hey, this sort of works, right? And God's like, hey, of course I'd come, since you're the older guy I'm interested in. And Iomori has the great of like, huh? What did you just say? And kind of has the whole thing of like, oh man, I'm actually just like playing in the movie, I'm playing this new role, so like I sort of needed to understand what like sort of like a pseudo date was like so I can act more brilliantly in the movie, which is like, okay, I understand what is totally going on here. And Iomori's just like, hey, of course I'd be shocked when you are the one saying it, which is like, oh my gosh, it's like really, really cute and interesting, right? And he even like then goes to like say like, oh man, Kana, you're always so expressive in all of your pinup models that you do, and like, hey, you can do a sexy face, you can also look cute, or you can even look cool. And I will say, with the 3 images we have gotten here, I think that the author of this series, which is who again? Genki Ono? Genki Ono. I think they really portrayed that sort of nature of like sexy, cute, and cool all in these images here, right? And Yumo's like, hey, I think you can use that in your acting, right? Like, hey, even if I didn't know you, I think you were the best out of the magazine, right? And Kana goes over to sit next to Iomori in this moment and just says like, hey, I don't think I fit into these very mature roles. I'm like, hey, I'm definitely better at being the younger one in this moment, right? And she just thinks like, hey, Iomori, next time I won't let you off the hook so easily. If you have feelings for me, I feel like I could set my mind to anything I want to do. Which was like, hey, really, really, really cute chapter of Hima 10. I really just loved seeing Kana do all of her stuff, and man, honestly, a very good chapter, and I definitely enjoyed it. Ultimate XS Kyoshi, the Black Parade has finally started, which is like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. We see that Yuta is the one, of course, who is like constructing all of this and making it go together. All of the lower ranked demons are like flying down to attack Kyoshi and all of his friends, and oh no, Sasaki put up a pentagram barrier, which pretty much makes it so no demons can attack Naraku City, which makes a whole lot of sense. Except for the bigger and stronger demons. We see some of these flying demons here in the moment, and we see that Winchester Motki comes through and fucking snipes one out of the sky, which is just a very cool thing, seeing what Motki's whole thing is. We see that Narwhal is getting ready to go down and attack 2 young teenage girls who are walking around in the street. As we see that none other than Karuta, who is of course Akari's brother, is coming through to save the day. He comes through, uses what seems to be some type of lightning ability to do like a lightning rider kick and like completely destroy one of these demons. And pretty much he just says like, hey, to these 2 girls, like, hey, my name's Karuta. It's dangerous for 2 girls to be walking around at night. I mean, there's this massive storm warning. So for now, tell me your Instagram handle. Sort of just being like a massive total creep, and they all sort of run away, which gets the point at the end of the day. We see that Yoko Ono is fighting some of these other lower ranked demons, and that Akari is like saving a cat and all of this sort of stuff. Pretty fun stuff. And eventually we see that an arm reaches down from the sky, and on its hand is riding some of the 13 club's top demon lords. As we see that a few of them, we see about 6 of them here, all with some unique and interesting designs. We see like one who's got like this stone or like iron over his mouth, sort of over his maw. We see this one with like some really long like horns sticking out of where his ears should be, one in a gas mask, one with like a blindfold on, one that looks very similar to Jack Joe wielding a trident, and another one who's just like where its eyes are would just have horns sprouting out. It looks to me more like a beastly demonic sort of thing. So honestly, looks really cool, and I'm excited to see where we go. Future Ultimate XS Kyoshi, of course, we started a Black Parade, and oh no, the 13 club's top demon lords are here. But pretty fun chapter of Ultimate XS Kyoshi, and I definitely did enjoy it. Akane Banashi was a chapter that I wasn't, like, the biggest fan of this week. I thought it was good. Pretty much shows that, like, Akane was very lonely in Paris whenever she first got there, and as time went on, she sort of, like, was able to lighten up the people around her by this one little kid. I think his name was Marus, is what what his mother calls him, and who gave Akane this little charm for just, like, putting on a little bit of a Rakugo performance in the street. It was sort of really nice to see, and I did like the message at the end of this chapter. And Akane, hey, she's now back in Tokyo, and she's getting ready to take on the world, pretty much. I did enjoy this chapter of Akane Banashi, but just like, hey, it just didn't feel like there was everything there for me personally. I thought it was a good chapter, though. Blue Box is up next, and man, if you want to talk about emotion in manga chapters, oh man, Blue Box has got it for you this week, as we just see, hey, Chinatsu and Yumeka are both playing basketball, going through, scoring all of their points, doing all of their various things, and at some point we see that Chinatsu's father, what's his name? We learned a little while ago, was it Fuyuki or something like that? Yeah, Fuyuki Kanao or something, whatever it is. He eventually cheers very, very loudly for Chinatsu, like, hey, Chinatsu, you can do it. And we see that Chinatsu hears this, sort of gets a little bit more fired up, makes another few baskets in, and then we just get a lot of narration from Yumeka's perspective, like, hey, come on, legs, move, lift your arms. There are less than 8 minutes remaining in this match. Like, hey, I've done my fair share of regretting. And she says, like, hey, I will use that regret as fuel. As we see that she goes through trying to make a basket and throws it over to one of her partners on her team, number 10, and number 10 ends up going and scoring a basket in this moment. And we see that the team member just is like, man, getting a pass for Yumeka always catches me off guard, and I'm glad that we did that during practice. And we see that this gives Yumeka a little bit of a smile as the match just continues going back and forth between Yumeka and Chinatsu, just doing all of their various things, as we get a little bit of a flashback to whenever both Chinatsu and Yumeka were younger, and going through and just talking about basketball and just like, hey, we've always got practice starting soon. Thanks for coming and getting me. And Yumeka's like, hey, I only come because you picked me up from my house. And Chinatsu's like, hey, it tears you up whenever you lose. And she's like, no, I'm just pissy. And Chinatsu pretty much says like, hey, I also want to fall in love with basketball even more. And I'm sure I'll find myself loving it endlessly. We'll live our lives loving basketball forever. As we see that the clock is down to 6 seconds remaining. And that in this moment, Chinatsu just goes and she sends the basketball flying, as presumably this is going to be the point that decides if Chinatsu's future is dying or if Yumeka's future is dying, or at least her high school careers in this moment. So it's like, very like, man, it's sort of bittersweet, and just seeing this final panel where Yumeka is trying to stop Chinatsu from making the shot, but Chinatsu just makes it anyway. It's just really, really nice, and man, great chapter of Blue Box for sure. Honestly, we're probably going to put it up here in the, like, higher categories, because, man, great chapter through and through. Elusive Samurai was just a history chapter this week, just going through, oh, man, here's all these various things going on here. We see, like, Tadayoshi's got, like, some children and all this stuff sort of going on, and, like, Takafuku, oh, no, who is this guy? It's just a massive history chapter, and eventually getting on the fact that Tokuki has not been being the nicest person to Shizuku, whatever their name, Shizuku, Ayako, and Mima this whole time, and sort of like pushing back from them after he realizes, like, yeah, he may need to marry all three of them. And the end of the chapter is the three of them, of course, Mima, Ayako, and Shizuku, all going to Tokuyuki and pretty much trying to convince him during the night to marry the three of them. And that is really all there is to the Elusive Samurai. Not really much that I enjoyed, so we're putting it down on the lesser ranks for sure. And then Witch Watch was the final chapter I read this week, and it was honestly a really, really fun one, as it's the comedy chapter all about Keigo coming home from somewhere, and he has got a magic butterfly put in him, and it is the T-form spell, which turns people into t-shirts, which, oh my gosh, it's a really funny concept in general. As the chapter goes on, we see that everybody's been turned into t-shirts, and that Miharu and Nico were out of the house at times, so they're the only two who are not affected. As we see that Kanchi has been turned into a t-shirt that is, like, very movable and, like, has some expressional faces on it in this moment. And we pretty much see that Bon, Morito, and Keigo have also all been turned into t-shirts, right? And we eventually get the whole idea that the only way to dispel the magic spell is to go through and have somebody model these t-shirts who looks good in them. And as soon as that happens, we see that this all works out. We see that eventually they call over Jekyll, of course, Miharu's friend, over, and pretty much just say like, hey, there's two people who we know would rock these, and it's of course Jekyll or Tenryu, who is the student council president. But like, how does he even put on t-shirts? Like, he's always got his hand on his cap the entire time, right? But Jekyll comes over, models a few of these t-shirts, like puts on Morito's, Morito pops out. We see that he puts on Keigo's, Keigo's pops out. We see he puts on Bond's, Bond turns back into a dragon. But he just can't get it with Keigo's. And we see that Jekyll just can't model properly Conchi's t-shirt, like it just doesn't look good on him. And eventually the whole thing is like, hey, what if we mix Jekyll's personality and Conchi's t-shirt together, making a brand new t-shirt? And eventually it's like, oh man, who can model this? Morito can't model it. And they're like, oh, wait a second. Keigo could model it because he's the weird guy who really likes wearing all of these shirts to begin with. So a little bit of a fun general thing, and yeah, just a fun comedy chapter that I did enjoy the whole crux of and a joke of at the end of the day, which I thought was pretty fun. So we're going to set it about right there, all things considered, and yeah, let's just like move all of these over. I guess we'll just like copy it over like this, and yeah, let's get to ranking all of these various chapters here. I definitely think that the Elusive Samurai is my least favorite chapter of the week. Just like, hey, yeah, so I think it was a little bit fun, but like, yeah, it was a lot of history stuff that I just like really didn't care about. I didn't even spell it right, Samurai. Just a lot of history stuff I just didn't really gel with at the end of the day. So we're going to put it on the bottom, followed by what I think is going to be an Astro Royale, which, hey, Astro Royale is not the least ranking series for the entire year anymore. Hey, it's not the worst. So Astro Royale we're going to put there. Kill Blue we're going to put up. Kill Blue. Put it up right next above those guys. I think that's a pretty good logical progression, all things considered. Honestly, we're going to put Akane Banashi next. I think it was a good chapter, yes. But just, again, like I said, not my cup of tea at the very end of the day. Akane Banashi. Alright, and then we have all of these chapters here, and like, man, we had a lot of really, really good and fun chapters this week. Honestly, I think Blue Box is going to be the chapter of the week. Just like, really fun. The emotion that I felt seeing Yumeka and Shinatsu's match going on here was just really fun. And honestly, we are going to put, I think, Embers next. I really like that first chapter, and I want to see more of this series. Probably followed up by an Ichi, or if I could spell Ichi the Witch, if I could also spell that, like, man, I cannot spell for some reason today. Then we'll do a Kagurabachi, followed up by a Hima 10. So put all of those in there, got rid of, yep, and now I just have 4 series left with Sidcraft, One Piece on Nexus, Kyoshi, and Witch Watch. Honestly, like I said, I really like this Sidcraft chapter, so we're going to put Sidcraft, oh my gosh, C-R-A-F-T. Sidcraft next. We have One Piece, Omega Kyoshi. Yeah, One Piece needs to go next. One P-I-E-C-E. Then I think we'll go Witch Watch, followed up by an Ulti Extra Kiyoshi. So there's all the general rankings this week. I do sort of like this Blue Box, Embers, Ichi the Witch, Kagurabachi. Oh, let me spell Kagurabachi, right? Not Kagurabachi, Kagurabachi. Hima 10, Sidcraft, One Piece, Witch Watch, Ultimate Exodus, Kyoshi, Akane Banashi, Kill Blue, Astro Royale, and the Elusive Samurai. And I think the character of the week is going to be Jikishiron. Jikishiron from Ichi the Witch. I just really liked her introduction. I really just like seeing how she interacted to defend that Ichi the Witch chapter. So, yeah, that's all the rankings this week, and hey, that's all my thoughts on Shonen Jump this month, so, or not this month, this week. Oh man, my brain must be fried after getting all that laundry, but hey, thank you guys so very much for watching this video on Weekly Shonen Jump issue number 10 of 2025. Of course, I've got plenty of other Weekly Shonen Jump videos on the channel. I've covered, hey, issue number 6, 7, issue number 8, issue number 9, issue number 10, and really every single issue since, what was it? Issue number, like, what, 43 of last year? I've been, like, covering it consistently. No, not even then. You know, it was issue number 43. So I've been covering Weekly Shonen Jump very consistently here for a good while, and I just absolutely love talking about Shonen Jump, so it's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. So, yeah, pretty good week so far, and, yeah, I'll catch you guys next time for Weekly Shonen Jump issue number 11 of 2025, and I will catch you guys then. This will be Glowplasma 231, signing out.